The dust-laden wind whipped across the open plains of Montana Territory, carrying with it the scent of coming rain as Ryder James Morgan dismounted his chestnut mare outside of what remained of the Whispering Pines saloon. The year was 1873, and the charred skeleton of the once thriving establishment stood as a stark reminder of the fire that had ravaged half the town of Cottonwood Creek just 3 days prior. As the 28-year-old ranch foreman tied his horse to a post that had somehow survived the blaze, his weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency, his blue eyes scanning the destruction for any sign of survivors. The sound of small footsteps caught his attention, barely audible above the howling wind. From behind a partially collapsed wall emerged a little girl, no more than 6 years old, her face smudged with soot and her blonde hair tangled in wild disarray. Her tattered dress hung loosely on her thin frame as she approached him cautiously, her wide eyes reflecting a maturity beyond her years. "Mama said you might help," the little girl whispered, her voice trembling as she clutched a small rag doll to her chest. Ryder crouched down to her level, his expression softening as he took in her desperate state. "Where is your mama, little one? She's hurt bad. The bad men came after the fire." She pointed toward what remained of the rooms above the saloon. "She told me to find the tall cowboy with the star on his horse. She said you'd help us." Ryder glanced at his saddle where a silver star-shaped concho adorned the leather, a distinctive mark that had become something of a calling card for him in these parts. Without hesitation, he picked up the child, settling her small weight against his hip. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, already moving toward the stairs that miraculously remained intact. "Sarah," she replied, clinging to his neck. "My mama's name is Olivia." "Well, Sarah, you hold on tight now. I'm going to take care of you and your mama." The stairs creaked ominously beneath his boots as he climbed carefully to the second floor. The acrid smell of smoke still lingered in the air, mixing with something else, the metallic scent of blood. Following Sarah's directions, he made his way to a room at the end of the hall. The door hung awkwardly on its hinges, and he pushed it open with his shoulder, still holding the child firmly in his arms. Inside, a woman lay on a bed, her breathing shallow and her auburn hair spread across the pillow like fire itself. A makeshift bandage covered her left shoulder, soaked through with blood. At the sound of their entrance, her eyes fluttered open deep emerald green and filled with a fierce determination despite her obvious pain. "You found him," she whispered to her daughter, a weak smile playing on her pale lips before her gaze shifted to Ryder. "I knew Sarah would find you." "Madam, I'm Ryder Morgan," he said, gently setting Sarah down beside the bed. "We need to get you to a doctor." "There isn't time," Olivia replied, wincing as she tried to sit up. "They'll be back by nightfall. Jackson and his men, they think I have it." "Have what?" Ryder asked, already examining her wound with careful hands. "The deed to the Silver Creek mine, my husband, before he died." Her voice faltered and she reached for her daughter's hand. "There's a claim worth more than this entire town, and Jackson will kill us both to get it." Ryder's jaw tightened as he understood the gravity of the situation. He'd heard stories about the Silver Creek strike and rumors of the violence that followed. He hadn't known Thomas Reed had been involved, but he remembered the man, a kind-hearted miner who'd been found dead under suspicious circumstances nearly a year ago. "You're Thomas Reed's widow," he stated, recognition dawning. Olivia nodded weakly. He wanted to build a future for Sarah. Now Jackson's determined to take everything. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance as the storm clouds gathered. Ryder made a swift decision. "We need to move quickly. Can you ride?" "I can try," Olivia replied, though the pain etched on her face suggested otherwise. "Mama's been sleeping a lot," Sarah interjected, her small fingers still clutching her doll. "She needs medicine." Ryder nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "I'm going to get you both to safety, and then we'll worry about medicine. There's a ranch about 3 hours' ride from here." "My ranch. Jackson and his men won't find you there." With gentle but efficient movements, he fashioned a better bandage for Olivia's wound, using supplies from his saddlebag. As he worked, he explained his plan, his voice low and reassuring. They would leave immediately, using the approaching storm as cover. "Why are you helping us?" Olivia asked as he carefully helped her to her feet. "You don't even know us." Ryder paused, his blue eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch despite her pain. "Let's just say I've got no love for men who prey on women and children. Besides," he added with the hint of a smile, "I never could resist a damsel in distress." The journey to Ryder's ranch was arduous. Olivia rode with him on his mare, her body held securely against his chest as the rain pelted down around them. Sarah was wrapped in his coat and nestled in front of them, occasionally dozing despite the rough terrain. The storm provided the cover they needed, obliterating their tracks almost as soon as they were made. By the time they reached the modest but well-maintained ranch house, night had fallen completely, and Olivia's fever had worsened. Ryder carried her inside, laying her gently on his own bed before returning for Sarah, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion. "Is my mama going to die?" Sarah asked suddenly as Ryder tucked her into the small bed in the spare room, his heart clenched at the directness of her question. "Not if I have anything to say about it, little one. Now get some rest. You've been mighty brave today." Once Sarah was settled, Ryder returned to Olivia's side. Her skin burned with fever and the wound looked angry and inflamed. He worked through the night, cleaning the injury with whiskey and applying a poultice of herbs that his mother had taught him to use years ago. He spooned water and broth between her parched lips whenever she stirred, speaking soft words of encouragement that he wasn't sure she could hear. As dawn broke the next morning, Olivia's fever finally broke. Her eyes opened, clearer than before, and found Ryder dozing in a chair pulled up beside the bed, his hand still resting near hers on the quilt. "You stayed," she murmured, her voice rough from disuse. Ryder straightened immediately, relief washing over his features. "Of course I stayed. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been trampled by a herd of wild mustangs," she replied with a weak attempt at humor, "but I'm alive thanks to you." "Sarah helped," he said with a smile. "That's quite a daughter you've got there." At the mention of her child, Olivia tried to sit up. "Where is she? Is she all right?" "She's fine," Ryder assured her, gently pressing her back against the pillows. Still sleeping in the next room, the little one was exhausted. Olivia relaxed slightly, though concern still etched her features. "Jackson won't stop looking for us. We've put you in danger by coming here." "Don't you worry about that," Ryder replied, his voice hardening slightly. "This is my land, and I know how to protect what's mine." The words hung between them, carrying more weight than perhaps he'd intended. "We're not yours to protect," Olivia said softly, though there was no reproach in her tone. Ryder met her gaze steadily. "Maybe not, but you're here now, and I'm not letting go until I know you're safe." Over the next few days, as Olivia regained her strength, she shared the full story with Ryder. Her husband Thomas had discovered a rich vein of silver in an area that was thought to be played out. He'd filed the claim legitimately but kept it quiet, knowing the dangerous men it might attract. Jackson McKay, a corrupt businessman with connections to several mining operations in the territory, had somehow learned of the discovery and confronted Thomas. When Thomas refused to sell, he'd been found dead the next day, an accident that no one questioned too closely. "I hid the deed," Olivia explained as they sat on the porch one evening, watching Sarah chase fireflies in the yard. "Thomas had a special hiding place in our cabin, but I moved it after he died. Jackson's been watching me for months, waiting for me to lead him to it. And the fire." Ryder asked, his expression grim, a warning. "When that didn't work, his men came for me directly." Her hand unconsciously moved to her healing shoulder. "I managed to get away with Sarah, but I knew we couldn't outrun them for long. Then I remembered you." Ryder raised an eyebrow. "You remembered me?" A faint blush colored Olivia's cheeks. "Thomas spoke of you sometimes. He said you were a man of honor, someone who stood up for what was right, no matter the cost. He mentioned the silver star on your saddle." "Thomas and I weren't close friends, but we had dealings now and then," Ryder acknowledged. "He was a good man. I was sorry to hear of his passing." "I mourned him deeply," Olivia said quietly. "He gave me Sarah, and for that I will always be grateful." Ryder watched the little girl who had now caught a firefly and was showing it to the ranch dog, a gentle border collie named Scout. Something in his chest tightened at the sight. In just a few days, the child had wound herself around his heart with her courage and resilience. "What will you do now?" he asked, turning back to Olivia. She sighed, her green eyes reflecting the fading light. "I don't know. The deed is still hidden in our old cabin near Silver Creek. With it, I could provide for Sarah's future. Without it—" She trailed off, the uncertainty of their situation hanging heavily between them. "We'll get it back," Ryder said firmly, "and then we'll deal with Jackson once and for all." "We?" Olivia questioned, her gaze searching his face. "Like I said," Ryder replied, reaching over to take her hand, "I picked you up and I'm not letting go." The following morning, Ryder rode into town to gather information. Dressed in plain clothes rather than his usual attire, he blended in with the miners and traders who frequented the general store. He learned that Jackson McKay had indeed been asking questions about Olivia and Sarah, offering a substantial reward for information about their whereabouts. More troubling was the news that McKay had hired additional men, hardened gunfighters who wouldn't hesitate to kill. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, and Ryder knew they needed to act soon. Upon returning to the ranch, he found Olivia teaching Sarah her letters at the kitchen table. The domestic scene struck him powerfully. His house had never felt like a home until they arrived. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine a future with them in it, but he quickly pushed the thought aside. They had more pressing concerns. "We need to retrieve the deed," he announced after explaining what he'd learned in town. "McKay's bringing in more men. It won't be long before someone talks about the ranch foreman who rode out of Cottonwood Creek with a woman and child during the storm." Olivia nodded, her expression resolute. "I need to go with you. The hiding place is secret. Thomas showed only me." "It's too dangerous," Ryder protested. "More dangerous than staying here alone with Sarah while you're gone," she countered. "What if McKay's men find the ranch? At least together we stand a chance." Ryder ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident in his gesture. "And what about Sarah? We can't take her into that kind of danger." "My neighbor Rosa Williams has a farm about 5 miles from here," he continued after a moment's thought. "Her husband died last winter, but she's got 2 grown sons who work the place with her. They're good people. She'd look after Sarah for a few days." Olivia hesitated, clearly torn at the thought of separation from her daughter. "I've never left her before." "Mama," Sarah's small voice interrupted. She had been quietly listening to their conversation. "Is it like when you and Papa had to go to the big city and I stayed with Mrs. Peterson?" Olivia knelt beside her daughter, smoothing back her blonde curls. "Yes, sweetheart, something like that, but we'll come back for you very soon, I promise." "And then we won't have to run anymore?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with hope. "That's the plan, little one," Ryder answered, crouching down beside them. "Your mama and I are going to fix things so you can have a proper home again." Sarah looked between them, her young face solemn. "Will it be here? I like it here. Scout likes me and the horses are nice." Ryder's eyes met Olivia's over the child's head, a silent question passing between them. "We'll see, Sarah," Olivia finally said. "First, we need to take care of this business with Mr. McKay." That evening, after explaining the situation to Rosa Williams and settling Sarah in her temporary home, Ryder and Olivia prepared for their journey. They would travel light and fast, taking mountain trails rather than the main roads to avoid detection. "The cabin is about a day and a half's ride from here," Olivia explained as they packed supplies. "It's isolated. Thomas chose it specifically for its remote location. Good for privacy, not so good if you need help," Ryder commented, checking his revolver before securing it in his holster. He added a rifle to his saddle, scabbard, and extra ammunition to their provisions. "Are you expecting trouble?" Olivia asked, noting his preparations. "I'm preparing for it," he replied honestly. "Better to have it and not need it than the other way around." They set out before dawn, Olivia riding a gentle mare from Ryder's small herd. The early summer air was crisp in the mountains, the wildflowers painting the meadows with splashes of color as they climbed higher into the rugged terrain. Under different circumstances, it might have been a pleasant journey. As they rode, Ryder found himself increasingly aware of Olivia's presence beside him. She was a natural horsewoman, sitting her mount with easy grace despite her still healing injury. More than once, he caught himself admiring the way the sunlight caught in her auburn hair or the determined set of her jaw as they navigated particularly challenging paths. They made camp that night in a sheltered grove, far from any established trails. After a simple meal of jerky and hardtack, they sat by the small fire, the stars wheeling overhead in the vast Montana sky. "Tell me about yourself, Ryder Morgan," Olivia said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "How does a man like you end up alone on a ranch in this corner of the territory?" Ryder poked at the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise into the darkness. "Not much to tell. My father was a rancher in Texas. After the war, things got hard down there. Too many bad memories, too much blood spilled on that land. I headed north, worked cattle drives, did some scouting for the army, eventually saved enough to buy my own spread. And family?" she asked carefully. "Lost my ma to fever when I was 15. Pa died during the war, shot by Union soldiers while defending our home." His voice held old pain but no bitterness. "Had a brother once, younger than me. He went east for schooling before the war, ended up fighting for the Union. We haven't spoken since." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. Ryder shrugged. "Life goes on. What about you? How did a lady like you end up married to a silver miner?" A small smile played on Olivia's lips. "I wasn't always a lady. My father was a doctor in St. Louis, but he had a fondness for gambling, lost everything when I was 16. I took work as a seamstress, then as a teacher when I could. Came west when a school in Denver advertised for instructors." Her expression softened with memory. "Thomas was in the city selling some early findings. He was so enthusiastic about the mountains, about building something lasting. He convinced me that adventure was better than security." "Was he right?" Ryder asked. "Yes and no," she replied thoughtfully. "The years with Thomas were good ones, especially after Sarah came along, but there was always another claim, another strike just over the horizon. We never did settle properly. And now I want stability for Sarah, a home, a community, regular schooling." She looked directly at Ryder, her green eyes reflecting the firelight. "The things I imagine your ranch could provide." The implication hung in the air between them, neither quite ready to acknowledge it further. Eventually, they banked the fire and settled down to sleep, each lost in their own thoughts about what the future might hold. They reached the cabin by midday the following day. The small structure stood in a clearing surrounded by pine trees, a stream bubbling nearby. From the outside, it looked abandoned, the door hanging askew and weeds growing up around the porch. "This is it?" Ryder asked, surveying the dilapidated building with skepticism. "Thomas believed in rustic living," Olivia replied with a hint of amusement. "But it's sturdier than it looks." They approached cautiously, Ryder insisting on checking the cabin and surrounding area before allowing Olivia to enter. Once satisfied they were alone, he followed her inside. The interior was simple but surprisingly well maintained, a single room with a stone fireplace, rough-hewn table and chairs, and a bed frame with a straw mattress. Dust covered everything, but there were no signs that anyone had disturbed the place since Olivia left. The deed. Ryder prompted, standing guard by the window as Olivia moved purposefully around the room. She knelt by the fireplace, her fingers working at something in the stonework. "Thomas built this himself," she explained. "He created a hidden compartment in the back of the hearth." After several minutes of manipulation, a small section of the stone shifted, revealing a cavity. Olivia reached inside and withdrew a oilskin packet. Her hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped it, revealing a folded document stamped with the territorial seal. "This is it," she said, relief evident in her voice. "The deed to the Silver Creek claim." Ryder moved to look over her shoulder at the document. "We should go," he said, scanning the legal text quickly. "We've been lucky so far, but I don't want to push it." Olivia nodded, carefully rewrapping the deed and tucking it securely inside her bodice. "I'm ready." As they stepped outside, however, the sound of approaching horses shattered their sense of security. Ryder reacted instantly, pulling Olivia back into the cabin and drawing his revolver. "How many?" She whispered, fear evident in her eyes. At least 3, maybe 4, he replied grimly, peering through a crack in the shutters. Must have followed our trail. Jackson's men, likely, too much of a coincidence otherwise. He moved quickly around the cabin, checking sight lines and potential escape routes. There's a back window. If they come in the front, we might be able to slip out that way. The riders drew closer, and Ryder could now make out their features. He recognized one of them, a gunman named Reeves, who had a reputation for ruthless efficiency. The others were strangers to him, but their well-armed appearance told him all he needed to know. "Well, well," called a voice from outside. "Looks like we've got company after all, Mrs. Reed, we know you're in there. Why don't you come on out and save us all a lot of trouble?" Olivia's face paled, but her voice was steady when she replied. "Mr. McKay not brave enough to come himself," a harsh laugh answered her. "The boss is a businessman. He sent us to conduct this particular transaction." "There's nothing to discuss," she called back. "This claim belongs to my husband's estate, to my daughter." "That's not how Mr. McKay sees it," the man replied. "Now, we can do this the easy way, or we can burn this place down around you." "Your choice, madam." Ryder met Olivia's eyes, silently communicating his plan. She nodded almost imperceptibly, understanding without words. They had discussed this possibility during their journey. If confronted, they would try to negotiate long enough to find an opening. "We're coming out," Ryder shouted. "No need for violence." He holstered his revolver but kept his rifle in hand as they stepped onto the porch. 4 men sat on horseback in the clearing, their weapons trained on the cabin. Reeves, a lean man with a scar running along his jaw, appeared to be the leader. "Morgan," Reeves said, recognition dawning. "Didn't know you were mixed up in this. McKay's offering good money for the deed, enough to split if you're interested in changing sides." "Not my style," Ryder replied evenly. "Mrs. Reed and her daughter have legal claim to this mine. I suggest you boys ride on before this gets messy." Reeves laughed, the sound devoid of humor. 4 against 1. Those aren't odds I'd bet on, cowboy." "Wouldn't be the first time," Ryder countered, his stance relaxed but ready. He could feel Olivia tense beside him, her hand slipping into her pocket where he knew she carried a small derringer. What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion and sound. One of Reeves' men grew impatient and fired a shot that splintered the wood near Ryder's head. In the same instant, Ryder pushed Olivia behind him and brought up his rifle, firing with deadly accuracy. The man who had shot first tumbled from his saddle as Reeves and the others scattered for cover. Bullets whizzed through the air as Ryder pulled Olivia back into the cabin, slamming the door behind them. "The back window," he directed, returning fire through a gap in the shutters. "Go now." Olivia hesitated only briefly before moving toward the rear of the cabin. The sound of breaking glass told Ryder she had cleared the window. He continued firing, keeping Reeves and his remaining men pinned down long enough for her to escape. When he was certain she had made it to the tree line, Ryder made his own exit, diving through the window and rolling to his feet in one fluid motion. Bullets thudded into the cabin wall behind him as he sprinted for the cover of the forest, zigzagging to make himself a difficult target. He found Olivia waiting behind a massive pine trunk, her derringer clutched in her hand. "This way," she whispered, leading him deeper into the woods. "There's an old mining trail that runs along the ridge. Thomas showed me once." They moved as quietly as possible through the underbrush, the sounds of pursuit growing more distant as they climbed higher. The steep terrain worked to their advantage on horseback. Reeves and his men would be forced to take a longer route around the mountain. By nightfall, they had put several miles between themselves and the cabin. Exhausted and cold, they took shelter in a small cave formed by an overhanging rock formation. Without a fire, they huddled together for warmth, the events of the day leaving them both shaken but alive. "You saved my life again," Olivia said softly, her head resting against Ryder's shoulder. "You saved mine too," he replied. "Quick thinking with that trail." They fell silent, the magnitude of their situation settling over them. They had the deed, but McKay's determination to obtain it had been made abundantly clear. As long as he believed they had it, he would continue to hunt them. "We need to get to the territorial capital," Ryder said finally. File the claim officially with the land office, get the law involved. Helena is at least 4 days' ride from here, Olivia pointed out, and we've lost our horses. We'll get new ones at the next town. For now, we rest. Tomorrow we keep moving. Olivia nodded, her body sagging with fatigue. Ryder, she murmured as sleep began to claim her, thank you for not letting go. The journey to Helena proved more arduous than either had anticipated. Without horses, they were forced to travel on foot through difficult mountain terrain. They rationed their remaining food carefully, supplementing it with berries and edible plants that Ryder identified from his time scouting. On the second day, they reached a small settlement called Pineview, where Ryder was able to purchase 2 horses with money he had sewn into the lining of his coat for emergencies. The town was little more than a trading post and a handful of cabins, but it offered them their first hot meal and proper rest since fleeing the cabin. The proprietor of the trading post, a grizzled old man named Hank, regarded them with curiosity but asked no questions beyond what they needed to buy. It was only as they were preparing to leave that he approached them with a warning. Riders came through yesterday, he said in a low voice. Asking about a woman with red hair and a tall cowboy. Didn't like the look of them, so I played dumb, but you might want to change your appearance, madam, if you're trying to stay ahead of trouble. Olivia exchanged a glance with Ryder. Thank you for the warning, she said. Is there somewhere here I might purchase different clothing? The old man directed them to a widow who sometimes took in sewing. Within the hour, Olivia had traded her distinctive dress for a simple skirt and blouse in drab brown, and her auburn hair was tucked beneath a weathered bonnet. The transformation was remarkable at a distance. She might now be mistaken for any frontier woman going about her business. They rode out of Pineview by midday, taking a less traveled route toward Helena. As they put miles between themselves and the settlement, Ryder found himself increasingly aware of Olivia riding beside him not just as someone he was protecting, but as a woman who had somehow become essential to his future happiness. What will you do when this is over? He asked as they made camp that evening. After we've secured the claim and dealt with McKay, Olivia looked up from tending the small fire. I've been thinking about that. The mine is valuable, but I have no interest in running it myself. I could sell it to a legitimate company, use the money to build a proper life for Sarah. What kind of life do you envision? Ryder pressed, his heart beating faster as he approached the question he really wanted to ask. She was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames. A home, she said finally. Somewhere safe with good land and clean air, a place where Sarah can grow up knowing stability and love. Her eyes lifted to meet his. Perhaps a place not unlike your ranch. Ryder moved to sit beside her, taking her hand in his. Olivia, I know we haven't known each other long, but these past days have shown me what kind of woman you are. Brave, resilient, loyal. He paused, gathering his courage. I'd like you and Sarah to stay at the ranch, not as guests, but as family. Her eyes widened. Ryder, are you proposing? I reckon I am, he admitted with a small smile. Might not be the most romantic timing, but I know what I feel. When I picked up Sarah that day and promised to help, something changed in me, and getting to know you, seeing your strength and your heart, I don't want to let either of you go. Tears glistened in Olivia's eyes. You hardly know me. I know enough, he countered gently. I know you're a devoted mother who would risk everything for her child. I know you're honest and kind, even when life has given you every reason not to be. I know that my house didn't feel like a home until you and Sarah were in it. He reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. I'm not asking for an answer right now. Just think about it. Think about what kind of life we could build together. Olivia leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. Sarah already adores you, she whispered. And I. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze with newfound clarity. I think I could very easily love you, Ryder Morgan. The kiss that followed was gentle at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more profound. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, the world around them seemingly transformed by this new understanding between them. We should rest, Ryder said reluctantly. We've still got a long ride ahead of us tomorrow. Olivia nodded, but neither moved immediately, unwilling to break the spell of the moment. Eventually, they settled by the fire, closer than before, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the stars emerge overhead. "Tell me about our future," she requested softly. "The one you imagine for us," Ryder smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "I see the ranch thriving, more cattle, maybe some crops, a bigger house with a proper room for Sarah and space for more children, if we're blessed that way. I see you teaching at the local school or maybe starting one closer to home for the ranch children." "And you," she prompted, "what will you be doing in this future of ours, working the land, teaching our children to ride and rope, building something lasting, something to pass on?" He kissed the top of her head. "Coming home to you every night, grateful for the family we've made." They continued talking well into the night, sharing dreams and plans, their voices mingling with the sounds of the wilderness around them. For the first time since Thomas's death, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a future filled with joy rather than uncertainty. And Ryder, who had long ago resigned himself to solitude, found himself eagerly anticipating a life shared with the woman beside him and the little girl who had stolen his heart. The next 2 days passed without incident as they made their way toward Helena. The territorial capital came into view on the afternoon of the 4th day, a growing city nestled in a valley. Its buildings a mix of wooden structures and more permanent stone edifices that spoke to its importance as a center of government and commerce. "We'll go straight to the land office," Ryder decided as they rode into town. "Get the deed registered properly before finding a place to stay for the night." The territorial land office was housed in an imposing brick building near the center of town. Inside, clerks busied themselves with maps and documents while prospective landowners waited their turn. Ryder and Olivia joined the queue, both tense with anticipation as they neared the front. When they finally stood before the clerk, a bespectacled man with ink-stained fingers, Olivia produced the deed from its hiding place. "I need to register this mining claim," she explained. "It belonged to my late husband, Thomas Reed." The clerk examined the document carefully, comparing it to official records. "Everything appears to be in order, Mrs. Reed," he confirmed after several minutes. "The claim was properly filed by your husband before his death, and as his widow, ownership transfers to you. I'll need you to sign some additional paperwork to complete the registration." Relief washed over Olivia as she signed where indicated. The clerk made copies of the documents, stamped them with the territorial seal, and returned the originals to her. "Congratulations, Mrs. Reed," he said. "The Silver Creek mine is officially registered in your name. There have been other inquiries about this claim recently, but without the original deed, we couldn't proceed with any transfers." "Other inquiries?" Ryder asked sharply. "From whom, a Mr.?" "Jackson McKay has been quite persistent," the clerk replied. "He claimed to be acting as your agent, Mrs. Reed, but without proper documentation or your presence, we couldn't accommodate his requests." Ryder and Olivia exchanged concerned glances. "Thank you for your diligence," Olivia said to the clerk. "Mr. McKay is most definitely not authorized to act on my behalf." As they left the land office, the weight of one burden lifted only to be replaced by another concern. "McKay knows we're heading to Helena," Ryder muttered as they walked toward the hotel. "He'll have men watching for us." "But the deed is registered now," Olivia pointed out. "He can't legally take the mine, even if he gets his hands on the original document." "Men like McKay don't care much for legalities," Ryder replied grimly. "As long as he believes there's a chance to get that silver, he'll keep coming after you." They checked into a respectable hotel under assumed names, taking a room with 2 beds and a lock on the door. After a proper meal, their first in days, they discussed their next steps. "We need to contact the territorial marshal," Ryder suggested. "With the deed legally registered, we have proof of McKay's illegal activities. Attempted murder, for one." Olivia nodded slowly. "But it would be our word against his. We need more concrete evidence." "I might know someone who can help with that," Ryder said thoughtfully. "An old friend from my Army scouting days works for the Pinkerton agency now. Last I heard, he was based in Helena, investigating mining fraud. The next morning, Ryder sought out his friend Robert Hawk Hawkins at the local Pinkerton office. The reunion was warm despite the circumstances that prompted it. "Morgan, you old devil," Hawk greeted him with a firm handshake. "Still finding trouble wherever you go, I see," Ryder grinned. "Some things never change, but this time trouble found me." He explained the situation with Olivia, the Silver Creek mine, and Jackson McKay's persistent pursuit. Hawk listened intently, his expression growing more serious as the story unfolded. "McKay's been on our radar for some time," he confirmed when Ryder finished. "Mining fraud, claim jumping, suspected involvement in at least 2 murders of legitimate claim holders. But he's careful never leaves evidence that can be tied directly to him. So you can help us?" Ryder asked hopefully. Hawk leaned back in his chair. "Officially, I need more than your word to open an investigation, but unofficially," he smiled slightly, "I owe you for that time in Apache territory. Let me see what I can find on McKay's operations here in Helena. In the meantime, keep Mrs. Reed and that deed safe." While Ryder met with Hawk, Olivia sent a telegram to Rosa Williams, confirming their safe arrival in Helena and asking after Sarah. The reply came swiftly, assuring her that Sarah was well and enjoying her time with Rosa's grandchildren. The knowledge that her daughter was safe allowed Olivia to focus more fully on resolving the situation with McKay. That evening, as they discussed Hawk's involvement over dinner in their hotel room, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Ryder motioned for Olivia to move into the adjoining bedroom while he approached the door cautiously, his hand resting on his revolver. "Who is it?" he called. "Message for Mr. Johnson," came the reply, using the alias Ryder had registered under. Still wary, Ryder opened the door slightly, keeping his body positioned to block any attempt to force entry. A young hotel employee stood in the hallway holding an envelope. "Gentleman downstairs asked me to deliver this," the boy explained. Ryder accepted the envelope and a small coin before closing and relocking the door. Inside was a note in Hawk's handwriting. "McKay arriving tomorrow on morning stage. Meeting at Silverton Mining Company office at noon. Opportunity to gather evidence. Will make contact at breakfast." Olivia emerged from the bedroom, her expression questioning. Ryder handed her the note. "Seems we might get our chance to deal with McKay sooner than expected." The following morning, they met Hawk in a quiet corner of the hotel dining room. He explained his plan in hushed tones. "McKay's meeting with the owners of Silverton Mining Company to discuss the acquisition of several claims, including, we believe, the Silver Creek property. He doesn't know the deed has been properly registered to Mrs. Reed." Hawk slid a small package across the table. "Inside is a Pinkerton badge and documentation authorizing Mrs. Reed to act as a temporary agent in this investigation." Olivia's eyes widened. "You want me to attend the meeting?" "Not exactly," Hawk clarified. "We want you positioned in the adjoining office where you can overhear the conversation. With luck, McKay will incriminate himself discussing his plans for your claim." "And if he doesn't?" Ryder asked, concerned about putting Olivia in such proximity to the man who had tried to kill her. "Then we've lost nothing," Hawk replied, "but this may be our best chance to gather the evidence needed to bring charges against him." After further discussion, they agreed to the plan. Hawk would arrange access to the building, while Ryder would accompany Olivia to ensure her safety. They would meet again 1 hour before the scheduled meeting to finalize details. The Silverton Mining Company occupied an elegant stone building on Helena's main street. Hawk met them at a side entrance, quickly ushering them inside and up a back staircase. "The meeting will take place in the main conference room," he explained, leading them down a corridor. "This office next door belongs to the company secretary, who is conveniently away today. There's a connecting door that's usually locked, but..." He produced a key with a slight smile. "Pinkerton has its resources." The secretary's office was small but well-appointed, with a large desk, filing cabinets, and a window overlooking the street below. Most importantly, the connecting door to the conference room was positioned in such a way that someone sitting at the desk would be hidden from view if the door were slightly ajar. "I'll be positioned in the lobby," Hawk continued, keeping an eye on who enters and exits. "Morgan, you stay here with Mrs. Reed. If anything goes wrong, use the back stairs we came up. There's an alley exit that leads to the next street over." With the plan in place, they settled in to wait. Olivia sat at the desk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, while Ryder positioned himself near the window where he could observe both the street and the office door. "Are you sure about this?" he asked Olivia quietly. "It's not too late to walk away." She met his gaze steadily. "I'm sure. This isn't just about the deed anymore. McKay tried to kill me, would have killed Sarah if he'd found her. He needs to be stopped before he hurts anyone else." Ryder nodded, admiration for her courage swelling in his chest. "Just be careful, no risks." "No risks," she agreed with a small smile. "After all, I have a future to look forward to now." The meaning behind her words wasn't lost on him. Before he could respond, however, voices in the corridor announced the arrival of the meeting participants. They fell silent, Olivia moving into position by the connecting door while Ryder remained vigilant by the window. Through the partially open door, they could hear the meeting commence. Several men exchanged pleasantries before the distinctive voice of Jackson McKay dominated the conversation. "Gentlemen, I appreciate your time today. As I mentioned in my correspondence, I've acquired several promising claims in the territory that I believe would complement Silverton's existing operations." The discussion continued, focusing first on properties that held little interest for Ryder and Olivia. It was only when McKay mentioned Silver Creek that they both tensed, straining to catch every word. "The Silver Creek claim is particularly valuable," McKay was saying. "Initial assays suggest a vein richer than anything currently being worked in the territory. The original claim holder, Thomas Reed, died last year in an unfortunate accident. And the current ownership," one of the Silverton representatives inquired. There was a slight pause before McKay replied. "The claim has reverted to me through a legal arrangement with Reed's widow. I have men retrieving the deed as we speak." Olivia's hand flew to her mouth to suppress a gasp. The blatant lie confirmed what they had suspected. McKay had no intention of acquiring the mine legally. "I was under the impression that Mrs. Reed was reluctant to sell," another voice commented. "There have been rumors." "Rumors only," McKay dismissed smoothly. "The woman is emotional, of course, but she has seen reason. The papers will be properly filed by the end of the week." "And if she changes her mind," the first representative pressed, McKay's voice hardened. "That won't be a problem. Trust me, gentlemen, by this time next week, Silver Creek will be ready for development under Silverton's expert management." The implication was clear enough that Olivia paled, and Ryder moved closer to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The meeting continued for another half hour, with McKay outlining his proposal for partnership with Silverton Mining Company. When it finally concluded, they waited until the sounds of departing footsteps had faded before breathing sighs of relief. "We got him," Olivia whispered, her voice shaking slightly. "He as good as admitted he plans to have me killed." Ryder nodded grimly. "Let's find Hawk. He'll know what to do next." They made their way cautiously down the back stairs and out through the alley, circling around to the front of the building where they had arranged to meet Hawk after the meeting. The Pinkerton agent was waiting for them, his expression tight with urgency. "Change of plans," he said without preamble. "McKay spotted me in the lobby. I don't think he recognized me, but he's suspicious. We need to move quickly." Hawk led them to a nearby law office where the territorial prosecutor, a stern-faced man named Judge Wilson, was waiting. Over the next hour, Olivia recounted everything she had heard in the meeting, with Ryder and Hawk adding details about the previous attempts on her life. "This is troubling," Judge Wilson acknowledged when they had finished, "but without corroborating evidence, it remains largely circumstantial." McKay could claim misunderstanding or deny the implications of his statements. "What about the men who attacked us at the cabin?" Ryder asked. "Reeves and his companions, if we could find them, get one to testify." "An excellent suggestion," the judge agreed. "Mr. Hawkins, can your agency locate these individuals? Hawk nodded. We already have men looking for them, but there's another concern. McKay knows Mrs. Reed is in Helena. After today's meeting, he'll be more determined than ever to find her. Then we must ensure her safety until we can build a proper case, Judge Wilson declared. He turned to Olivia. Madam, I would advise you to leave Helena immediately. Return to your daughter and remain somewhere secure until we can proceed with charges against McKay. I can take her back to my ranch, Ryder offered. It's remote, defensible. And the first place McKay will look, Hawk pointed out. No, you need somewhere unexpected, he thought for a moment. There's a Pinkerton safe house about 30 miles from here used for protecting witnesses. You'd be comfortable there and McKay wouldn't know to look for you. Olivia looked to Ryder, a question in her eyes. He understood her hesitation. The safe house would be secure, but it would mean delaying their reunion with Sarah and postponing the future they had begun to envision together. How long? Ryder asked Hawk. A week, maybe two, until we can gather enough evidence for an arrest warrant. Ryder took Olivia's hand. It's your decision, he told her. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. She squeezed his hand gratefully before addressing the judge. I appreciate the offer of protection, but my daughter has already been separated from me for too long. I can't ask her to wait weeks for my return, especially after everything she's been through. Judge Wilson frowned. Mrs. Reed, I understand your concern, but your safety is my responsibility, she finished firmly. I have the deed legally registered. I have Mr. Morgan's protection and hopefully your assurance that you will pursue this case against McKay. The rest is up to me. The judge studied her for a long moment before nodding reluctantly. Very well, but I strongly advise caution. McKay is not a man to be underestimated. Believe me, Olivia replied with feeling, I'm well aware of that. They left the law office with a promise from Hawk to continue the investigation and communicate any developments via telegram to a general store near Ryder's ranch. The plan was to depart Helena at dawn the following day, taking a different route than the one they had used to arrive. That evening, as they prepared for their journey, a knock at their hotel room door once again put them on alert. This time, it was a hotel clerk delivering a telegram that had arrived for Mrs. Johnson. Olivia opened it with trembling fingers, her expression softening as she read the message. It's from Rosa, she told Ryder. Sarah's been asking when we'll return. Apparently she's decided that Scout needs her to teach him new tricks. Ryder smiled, moving to stand behind her and reading the telegram over her shoulder. Sounds like we're missed. Yes, Olivia agreed, leaning back against him. It feels good to be missed, to have somewhere and someone to return to. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pressing a kiss to her temple. One more day of travel and we'll be home. The word hung in the air between them, full of promise and newfound meaning. Home was no longer just a place for either of them. It was wherever they were together with Sarah, building the family that had begun with a whispered plea for help and a cowboy who refused to let go. They departed Helena before sunrise, riding steadily through the day and making camp only when darkness made further travel unsafe. The journey was tense but uneventful, each mile bringing them closer to Sarah and the ranch that now represented their future together. On the afternoon of the second day, they crested a hill that offered a view of Ryder's property in the valley below. The sight of the ranch house, barn, and corrals brought a sense of homecoming that Ryder had never felt so strongly before. There it is, he said, drawing his horse to a halt beside Olivia's. Home. She shaded her eyes against the setting sun, taking in the modest but well-maintained buildings and the small herd of cattle grazing in a nearby pasture. It's beautiful, she said softly. More beautiful than I remembered. As they approached the ranch, a small figure burst from the main house, running toward them with Scout barking excitedly at her heels. Sarah's blonde hair streamed behind her as she raced down the path, her face alight with joy. Mama, Ryder. She called, waving frantically. You're back, Ryder dismounted quickly, lifting Sarah high into the air when she reached them. Her delighted laughter warmed his heart as he swung her in a circle before setting her down so she could embrace her mother, who had also dismounted. I missed you so much, Olivia murmured, holding her daughter tightly. Have you been good for Mrs. Williams? Sarah nodded enthusiastically. I helped with the chickens and taught Scout to fetch sticks, and I drew pictures for you and Ryder. She turned to him with a serious expression. Did you keep Mama safe like you promised? Ryder crouched down to her level. I sure did, little one, and your mama kept me safe too. Rosa Williams appeared from the house, wiping her hands on her apron as she approached. Welcome back, she greeted them warmly. I was just about to serve dinner. There's plenty if you're hungry after your journey. Over the meal, they shared a simplified version of their adventures with Rosa, emphasizing the successful registration of the deed and downplaying the dangers they had faced. Sarah, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, chattered happily about her time with Rosa's grandchildren, and her plans to show Ryder and her mother all the new tricks Scout had learned. Later, after Sarah had been tucked into bed in the small room that was now decidedly hers, Ryder and Olivia sat on the porch swing, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I sent a boy to town with telegrams while you were settling Sarah, Ryder said. One to Hawk, letting him know we arrived safely, and another to Judge Wilson, confirming our location in case he needs to reach us. Olivia nodded, leaning against his shoulder. Do you think McKay will follow us here? Eventually he might, Ryder admitted, but not immediately. Hawk will make sure he's watched in Helena, and the judge seemed determined to build a case quickly. And if he does come, Ryder's arm tightened around her, then we'll be ready. This is our home, Olivia. I won't let anyone threaten that. She smiled at his use of our, the word carrying a weight of commitment that warmed her from within. I've been thinking about what you said about us becoming a family, and, he prompted, his heart rate quickening, and I think Sarah deserves a father who will love her as his own. I think I deserve a husband who respects and values me, and I think you, Ryder Morgan, deserve a family who will fill this house with laughter and love. She turned to face him fully. So yes, if you're still asking, my answer is yes. The kiss that followed sealed their promise to each other, a tender beginning to the life they would build together. When they finally broke apart, Ryder pressed his forehead to hers, his voice rough with emotion. I'll make you happy, Olivia Reed, both of you, that's my solemn vow. You already have, she whispered back. From the moment you picked us up, you've given us hope again. The next 2 weeks passed in a blend of domestic happiness and vigilant preparation. Ryder arranged for additional hands to stay at the ranch, ostensibly to help with cattle but primarily to provide extra security. He also reached out to neighbors, ensuring that unusual visitors to the area would be noted and reported. Regular telegrams from Hawk kept them informed of developments in Helena. The Pinkerton agent had located one of Reeves' men, wounded in the confrontation at the cabin, and persuaded him to testify against McKay in exchange for leniency. Judge Wilson was building a case methodically, gathering evidence of McKay's other illegal activities to strengthen the charges. Meanwhile, life at the ranch settled into a pleasant rhythm. Olivia took over management of the household, bringing a woman's touch to the rooms that had previously been furnished for function rather than comfort. Sarah divided her time between helping her mother, playing with Scout, and following Ryder around the property, absorbing his lessons about ranch life with eager enthusiasm. In the evenings, they would gather on the porch or by the fireplace, sharing stories and making plans. Ryder spoke of expanding the herd, building a larger house, perhaps adding orchards and gardens. Olivia discussed the possibility of starting a small school for the children of neighboring ranches. Sarah contributed her own ideas: a tree house, a pony of her own, more dogs to keep Scout company. It was during one such evening, as they sat by the fire with Sarah already asleep in her room, that Olivia broached a subject that had been on her mind. I've been thinking about the mine, she said, her fingers intertwined with Ryder's. About what to do with it once this business with McKay is resolved. What are you considering? He asked. Selling it would provide financial security for Sarah's future, for our future together, but given what Thomas went through to secure it, what we've risked to protect it. She hesitated. I'm not sure that's the right path. Ryder nodded thoughtfully. What's the alternative? A partnership, she suggested. With a reputable mining company, not Silverton, obviously where we retain partial ownership but leave the actual operation to those with expertise. The proceeds could be used not just for our family, but to improve the community. Perhaps build that school we've discussed, or establish a fund to help widows and orphans in the territory. Pride swelled in Ryder's chest as he listened to her vision. Thomas would approve, he said softly. Using the mind to create something lasting, something that helps others. I think so too, she agreed, and it feels right, doesn't it, after everything we've been through, to use this opportunity to make a difference. Their discussion was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders moving at speed toward the ranch. Ryder was on his feet instantly, reaching for the rifle that was never far from hand these days. Stay inside, he instructed Olivia. Wake the hands and have them check the back of the property. I'll see who's coming. Heart pounding, he moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtains. 3 riders approached the main house, their features indistinct in the gathering darkness. Behind him, he could hear Olivia moving quietly through the house, alerting the ranch hands who had been sleeping in the bunkhouse. Ryder positioned himself by the front door, rifle ready, as the riders drew up in the yard. To his immense relief, he recognized Hawk's distinctive silhouette dismounting from the lead horse. "Morgan," Hawk called. "It's Hawkins, we need to talk." Ryder opened the door cautiously, still keeping his rifle visible. "Kind of late for a social call, Hawk." "Not social," Hawk replied grimly. "McKay's men left Helena yesterday. We think they're heading this way." Ryder ushered the Pinkerton agent and his 2 companions inside, where Olivia had already returned to the main room. Introductions were made quickly. The other men were also Pinkerton agents, assigned to the McKay case. "How many men with McKay?" Ryder asked as they gathered around the kitchen table. "At least 6 that we know of," Hawk answered. "Including Reeves. They're heavily armed and making no secret of their intentions. McKay was overheard saying he'd settle the Reed woman once and for all." Olivia paled but remained composed. "When do you expect them to arrive?" "Tomorrow, possibly the day after. They're traveling fast but not taking the most direct route. Seems they're trying to avoid towns where they might be recognized." Ryder's mind raced, evaluating options. "We have 4 hands plus myself. With you 3, that's 8 against their 7. Not bad odds. Except that we need McKay alive," Hawk pointed out. "Judge Wilson has issued an arrest warrant, but it's worthless if McKay doesn't survive to stand trial." "And Sarah," Olivia interjected. "I won't have her anywhere near this confrontation." "Rosa Williams," Ryder suggested immediately. "She'd take Sarah again, keep her safe until this is over." Olivia nodded agreement. "I'll pack her things tonight. The sooner she's away from here, the better." The planning continued well into the night. By dawn, a strategy had been developed that would allow them to capture McKay while minimizing risk to everyone involved. One of Hawk's men would take Sarah to Rosa's farm at first light, while the others prepared the ranch for McKay's arrival. When morning came, explaining the situation to Sarah proved more difficult than anticipated. The child clung to her mother, her eyes wide with fear. "Why can't you come too?" she asked plaintively. "And Ryder, I don't want to go without you." Olivia knelt before her daughter, smoothing back her blonde curls. "Remember how I told you that sometimes grown-ups have important business to take care of? This is one of those times, but it won't be for long, I promise." "Is it the bad men?" Sarah whispered. "The ones who hurt you before?" Ryder crouched down beside them, his heart aching at the child's perceptiveness. "Yes, little one, but this time we're ready for them, and we have help." "Are you going to shoot them?" she asked with the directness only a child could manage. Ryder exchanged a glance with Olivia before answering carefully. "We're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone ever again. The law is going to put them in jail for what they've done." Sarah considered this, her small face serious. "Like in the story about the sheriff and the outlaws." "Just like that," Ryder confirmed. "And when it's all over, we'll come get you from Mrs. Williams' farm. Then we can be together without having to worry about bad men anymore." After further reassurances and many hugs, Sarah finally agreed to go with the Pinkerton agent. Watching them ride away, Olivia leaned against Ryder, drawing strength from his solid presence. "She'll be safe," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple, "and soon this will all be behind us." The day passed in tense preparation. Positions were established around the property with clear lines of sight to the main approach. Inside the house, furniture was rearranged to provide cover if the confrontation moved indoors. Ammunition was distributed, roles assigned, and signals agreed upon. As dusk approached, one of the ranch hands who had been posted as a lookout reported movement on the North Ridge riders approaching cautiously, using the tree line for cover. "This is it," Hawk announced, checking his weapon one final time. "Everyone to your positions. Remember, we want McKay alive if possible." Ryder turned to Olivia, who had insisted on remaining at the ranch despite his objections. She stood tall, a determined set to her jaw and a loaded shotgun in her hands. "Stay in the house," he told her, "no matter what happens out there." "I'll defend our home," she replied simply, "but I won't take unnecessary risks. I promised Sarah we'd both come for her, remember?" He pulled her into a fierce embrace, pouring all his love and fear into a brief, passionate kiss. "When this is over," he vowed, "we're getting married." "No more waiting," she smiled against his lips. "Is that a proposal, Ryder Morgan?" "A promise," he corrected. "The proposal happened days ago. This is me telling you I'm not patient enough to wait any longer to make you my wife." "Then you'd better make sure you come back to me in one piece," she replied, her voice steady despite the tears shimmering in her eyes. "Because I intend to hold you to that promise." With a final kiss, they separated, each moving to their assigned position. Ryder joined Hawk behind the barn, where they had a clear view of the approach to the main house. The waiting was the hardest part, the knowledge that violence was imminent but being powerless to prevent it. The attack, when it came, was surprisingly direct. McKay and his men rode boldly into the yard, making no attempt at stealth. Ryder recognized the businessman immediately from descriptions: a corpulent man with a florid face and expensive clothing ill-suited to rough riding. Beside him rode Reeves, his scarred face set in a perpetual scowl. "Mrs. Reed," McKay called out, his voice carrying easily in the evening air. "I believe you have something that belongs to me. Come out now, and perhaps we can resolve this matter civilly." No response came from the house, as planned. McKay signaled to his men, who began to spread out around the property. "Search the place," he ordered. "Find the woman and the deed. Kill anyone who interferes." That was the signal they had been waiting for, a direct order that incriminated McKay beyond doubt. Hawk stood from his position, his Pinkerton badge clearly visible on his chest. "Jackson McKay," he shouted. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and claim jumping. Surrender your weapons and order your men to do the same." For a moment, McKay seemed genuinely shocked, his mouth opening and closing without sound, then his face contorted with rage. "Kill them." He screamed to his men, "Kill them all." What followed was chaos. Gunfire erupted from multiple positions as Pinkerton agents and ranch hands engaged with McKay's men. Ryder focused on Reeves, who had immediately taken aim at Hawk. His first shot caught the gunman in the shoulder, spinning him from his saddle. Through the smoke and confusion, Ryder saw McKay turning his horse, attempting to flee. Without hesitation, he sprinted across the yard, dodging bullets as he ran. With a flying leap, he tackled McKay from his mount, both men crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs. McKay was stronger than his appearance suggested, fighting with the desperation of a cornered animal. They rolled in the dirt, trading blows until Ryder managed to pin the older man beneath him. "It's over, McKay," he panted, pressing his forearm against the businessman's throat. "The deed is registered. The law knows what you've done. You've lost." "I never lose," McKay snarled, reaching for something in his coat. Ryder caught the glint of metal just in time, twisting away as a small derringer fired. The bullet grazed his side, tearing through his shirt and leaving a burning trail across his ribs. Despite the pain, Ryder maintained his grip on McKay's wrist, forcing the weapon from his hand. With a final, decisive blow, he rendered the man unconscious just as Hawk arrived at his side. "Morgan, you hit," the Pinkerton agent asked, helping him to his feet. Just a scratch, Ryder grimaced, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. "McKay, alive, unfortunately for him," Hawk confirmed, securing manacles around the unconscious man's wrists. "And most of his men are either dead or captured. Reeves is wounded but will live to stand trial." The firefight had ended almost as quickly as it began. 2 of McKay's men lay dead in the yard, while the others were being rounded up by Pinkerton agents and ranch hands. One of Ryder's men had taken a bullet to the leg but would recover. As the situation came under control, Ryder's thoughts turned immediately to Olivia. He had heard shotgun fire from the house during the confrontation, and fear clutched at his heart as he hurried toward the building, ignoring the pain in his side. He found her on the porch, the shotgun still in her hands as she covered one of McKay's men who had tried to enter the house. The outlaw sat against the wall, clutching a wounded arm and glaring at her with a mixture of pain and grudging respect. "Olivia," Ryder called, relief flooding through him at the sight of her unharmed. She looked up, her face breaking into a smile as she saw him. The shotgun lowered slightly as she moved toward him, only to freeze when she noticed the blood staining his shirt. "You're hurt," she gasped, closing the distance between them. "It's nothing," he assured her, wrapping his uninjured arm around her. "Just a scratch like I promised. McKay's been captured and his men are either dead or in custody. It's really over." She whispered, searching his face for confirmation. "It's really over," he confirmed, holding her close. "McKay will stand trial along with Reeves and the others. Judge Wilson has enough evidence now to ensure they never threaten anyone again." The aftermath of the battle kept them busy well into the night. The wounded were tended to, the dead respectfully covered until they could be properly buried, and the prisoners secured for transport to Helena. Hawk arranged for a wagon to convey McKay and his surviving men to the territorial capital, where they would face justice for their crimes. By dawn, the ranch had regained a semblance of order. Ryder, his side bandaged by Olivia's careful hands, sat on the porch with her beside him, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of gold and pink. "First thing after breakfast, I'm riding to Rosa's to bring Sarah home," he said, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "We'll go together," she corrected gently. "I don't think either of us will truly believe this is over until we have her back with us." He nodded agreement, pressing a kiss to her hair. And then we start our future," she replied, turning to face him. "You mentioned something about not waiting to get married." A slow smile spread across Ryder's face. "I seem to recall making that promise, yes." "Good," Olivia said decisively. "Because I've waited long enough for happiness, Ryder Morgan. I don't intend to wait any longer either." 2 weeks later, on a perfect summer day, Ryder and Olivia were married in the garden behind their ranch house. The ceremony was small but joyful, attended by neighbors, friends, and the Pinkerton agents who had become allies in their struggle. Judge Wilson himself performed the service, having traveled from Helena for the occasion. Sarah stood proudly beside her mother, scattering wildflower petals and beaming with happiness. Scout lay at Ryder's feet, occasionally thumping his tail against the ground as if in approval of the proceedings. "Do you, Ryder James Morgan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Judge Wilson intoned. "I do," Ryder replied, his voice steady and sure as he gazed into Olivia's eyes. "I picked her up and I'm never letting go." Tears of joy glistened in Olivia's eyes as she repeated her own vows, promising to love and cherish the man who had saved not just her life, but her future. "By the power vested in me by the Montana Territory," Judge Wilson concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." The kiss they shared was a promise of love, of family, of a future built together from the ashes of their separate pasts. As they turned to face their friends, now officially a family, Ryder felt Sarah's small hand slip into his. "Are you my papa now?" she asked, looking up at him with hope shining in her eyes. Ryder crouched down to her level, his heart full to bursting. "I am if you want me to be, little one." Sarah nodded solemnly before breaking into a wide smile. "I do want that. Mama said you picked us up and wouldn't let go." "That's what papas are supposed to do." "Your mama is a very wise woman," Ryder agreed, lifting Sarah into his arms as he stood. With his free arm, he drew Olivia close, the three of them together at last, a family forged in adversity but bound by love. In the years that followed, the Morgan Ranch flourished. The proceeds from the Silver Creek mine, managed through a partnership with an ethical mining company, allowed them to expand their operations and establish the school that Olivia had envisioned. Sarah grew into a confident young woman with her mother's determination and her adoptive father's sense of justice. Two more children joined their family, a boy named Thomas, in honor of Sarah's birth father, and a girl they called Rose, after the neighbor who had sheltered Sarah during their darkest days. The house that had once seemed empty to Ryder now rang with laughter and occasional arguments, with the sounds of life being lived fully and joyfully. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ryder and Olivia sat on the porch swing just as they had that first night, watching their children play in the yard with Scout's descendants. "Do you ever think about how it all began?" Olivia asked, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder. "About that day in Cottonwood Creek, often," Ryder admitted, his fingers intertwined with hers. "It's hard to believe that so much happiness could come from such a desperate moment." "Mama said you might help," she quoted softly. "Those words changed everything." "No," Ryder corrected gently, turning to meet her gaze. "It was what came after that changed everything, when I picked you up and never let go." In the glow of the setting sun, their lips met in a kiss as sweet and promising as their first, a testament to the love that had grown between a wounded widow, a lonely cowboy, and the little girl who had brought them together with 6 simple words whispered in the dust of a Montana afternoon.